Welcome to Pillow Talk with Dr. Boyce and Dr. Alicia Watkins. My name is Dr. Boyce Watkins, and I'm here with my lovely wife, Dr. Alicia. It's so good to see everybody. I hope you guys are doing well. As you come in, please hit that thumbs up button, thumbs up, share, subscribe. Also, just a reminder, this podcast is on Spotify. So if you look up my name, Boyce Watkins, on Spotify, you can find the Dr. Boyce breakdown. We put all of our episodes on Spotify. And our goal on Pillow Talk is to get together. We're both professors. My wife is a professor of social work, and I am a professor of finance, and we like to get together and talk about topics that relate to intelligent stuff kind of happening in the Black community, things that we think the community might want to discuss and kind of understand. So first off, I want to ask my wonderful wife, how you doing today, babe?
I'm doing all right. It is a Monday night and it feels like a Sunday night. I don't know why. This doesn't feel like a work day, but
Yeah,
that's how
yeah.
I'm
Well,
doing.
well, it's the new year, and happy New Year to everybody.
Happy New Year. How are you
I
doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing really good. I'm super excited. We've been doing a 30-day financial consciousness training that people can take a look at drboyceelevate.com. If you'd like to join us, we're only on day 3. We're going to do 30 straight days of financial lessons every morning and go through a workbook. I put together a workbook called 30 Days to Wealth and Power. It takes 30 days to form a new habit. And so we're spending each day, we're filling out something in this financial reflective journal to understand your money mindset, things like that. And in fact, you should come in one day because we're doing a lot of financial psychology. Like tomorrow, our big reflection is how what money was like for you growing up as a child and how that might impact your view of money today.
Wait,
And I
where did
know
you get
that
that question from?
yeah,
You
I know
taking
my
my
therapist.
question.
Well, I'll be taking notes, baby. I've been taking notes. When my wife talks, I listen. Give me a yes if you understand the value of listening to smart Black women, how that will make your life better. Give me a yes in the chat if you agree. So I want to say hello to Dr. Vibe and El Haj and Khalid. I see you. Mike G is asking, can I still join the class with a discount by getting a copy of the book? Sure. If you go to drboycebooks.com, if you get a copy of the book, I told them to send out another link where you can join us. Now, those who buy a copy of the book can join the live sessions. If you want to get all the archive sessions and everything that's there and have it for life, you can go to drboyceelevate.com. So there's 2 ways to kind of get into the class, and hundreds of you are enrolled. And I'm hoping you're getting tremendous value from it because we work really hard in the Black Business School to elevate our people. That's our top priority. Now, let's jump into our conversation for today. This is a biggie. This thing with Claudine Gay. Give me a yes in the chat, everybody. First of all, give me a yes if you can hear me. Let me know you can hear me okay. And then number 2, let me know if you heard about the situation with the Black Harvard president, Claudine Gay, who just resigned over some allegations involving plagiarism. And there's a whole lot more to it. It goes a whole lot deeper than just the allegation. It really goes to a racism problem that I'm going to go ahead and say that I think Harvard has. I think academia has it also as well. And I'm going to kind of break some of that down. And I'd like to ask my wife, so did you hear about what happened with Dr. Gay and she resigned, but I don't think it was something that she wanted to do. I feel like she was kind of pressured to do it. Did you hear about this? What do you think, babe?
Yeah, of course I heard about this, and I was just in the mood to follow her career to see where it goes. And this is very short-lived. So she's resigned as president of the university, but she is taking a post as an instructor. So I guess she's just going back to being a regular faculty member. But I think it's really interesting that not only did they force her to resign, but they were accusing her of plagiarism and for her PhD, I think. And so now they're trying to like ruin her name. It's not even enough for her to just resign. The thing is that she goes down as this incompetent Black woman who's scary and doesn't need to be in administration, which is an all too familiar thing among Black people in academia.
Yeah. I think you and I were kind of triggered by this because we've seen this happen.
Yeah.
Like we know how academia works. We know that academia is a funny place because everybody's smart. In the PhD programs, everybody's a genius. Everybody made straight A's, and so a lot of people think it's all about just how hard you work and how smart you are. No, I've seen absolute geniuses. I'm talking about the baddest scholars around get kicked out of their PhD program. Not even graduate because they upset the wrong person. And a lot of people that didn't go through like tough PhD programs, like with a lot of academic rigor and stuff like that, they may not understand this. They say, well, if you do your job and you're good, like what can go wrong? And it's just not like that, right? The
Nobody
politics
owes
can be really ugly.
nobody owes you a PhD. There's no program on the face of this earth that owes you a PhD. You have to overwhelmingly convince a committee of people that you put together, and you have to convince them that you're worthy of a PhD. And they really guard the academy. No one, the thing is about working at universities, it's a beautiful thing. I mean, you have your holiday, you have a whole month off. I have the whole, basically 4 weeks off in December and January. You have your summers off and you still get a full salary. I mean, so in a sense, it is a beautiful job to have. You get very good health insurance, very good benefits. And if you can navigate the political arena of academia, it's actually a pretty comfortable place to be, and a place where you are paid to write, to teach, to read, to do all the fun things that theoretically you want to do, but it's the politics of it. And this issue today that we're talking about is poor Dr. Gay is seeing how political it is to be in administration in higher education. Yeah.
Well, okay, so let's give the framing so people can understand this. Now, did you all hear about this story? Let us know how much you know about this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to read a little bit from this article in the Washington Post about what happened to Dr. Claudine Gay. Dr. Gay was the first Black president at Harvard University. She just resigned. It says here in the Washington Post. They basically said, let's see, Harvard President Claudine Gay resigned Tuesday after weeks of criticism of her scholarship and leadership on campus, saying it would help the university move forward with a focus on the institution rather than any individual. She was the second Ivy League president to resign in the wake of a congressional hearing last month on campus anti-Semitism, a sign to some of the power that politicians and donors can wield. Gay was also confronted with dozens of allegations of plagiarism from her academic work. University leaders said last month she did not engage in research misconduct. So apparently they did a university investigation. They found that she was clean. Some question whether Gay, who in July became Harvard's first Black president, was being held to a different standard because of her race. Let's just stop there. Let's stop there. So they're asking a question. I want y'all to give me a yes or no. What do y'all think? We're gonna go to the panel of intelligent Black people. I can't find my gavel, but whenever we call a meeting of intelligent Black people, I pound my gavel and I can't find it. But I want to ask y'all, do y'all think, what do y'all think? Do y'all think that working at a historically racist, incredibly white institution means that her race played some part in the way she was evaluated? What do y'all think? Or do you think that America is, what was that term they used to use? What, post-racial? After Obama got elected, they started using that ridiculous term, post-racial. What do y'all think? Give us a yes or no. Do you think that race might have had something to do with it? Or do you think that race just didn't matter? What do y'all think? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep reading the article here so we can know about Dr. Gay and get the context. Then, babe, I want to get your take on what I've just read here. It says here in the Washington Post that the fallout intensified national debates over freedom of speech, diversity in schools, and who should shape education in this country. In a letter to the Harvard community, Gay called it a singular honor to be a member of the university, my home and my inspiration, and for most of my professional career. My deep sense of connection to Harvard and its people has made it all the more painful to witness the tensions and divisions that have riven our community in recent months, et cetera, et cetera. Her resignation was first reported by the Harvard Crimson. She will return to the faculty. Harvard's provost and chief academic officer, Alan M. Garber, who I'm sure is white enough for the job, an economist and physician, will serve as the interim president. And by the way, I'm sure Professor Garber has been questioned on his views on that conflict in the Middle East. What do you think? What do y'all think? Do you think he's gonna be sympathetic to the Israeli cause? What do you think, babe? What do you think is really happening here with all this pressure that was put on Claudine Gay?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that there was tremendous pressure for Dr. Gay to suspend any students who were protesting on campus against what was happening in the Gaza Strip. And she took the stance where she says, listen, as long as nobody is harmed, I can't silence free speech. Like, people should be able to, on a campus of higher learning where all diverse thoughts are valued and important, theoretically, we should allow all students to be able to discuss and have intelligent conversations about a variety of different topics, and that should be allowed. And that was her position in that tribunal. And I mean, clearly, the donors of Harvard said, oh no, you are not to talk anything about anti-Semitism on campus. You are not to say anything negative about anybody Jewish on that campus. And the powers that be got together and said, no, she is not making a campus environment that's safe for our children. And so therefore she has to go.
Well, by the way, you're watching Pillow Talk with Dr. Boyce and Dr. Alicia Watkins. My name is Dr. Boyce Watkins. This is my wife, Dr. Alicia Watkins. Dr. Alicia is a licensed therapist and a full professor of social work, and I'm a finance professor. If you'd like to learn more about what Dr. Alicia does, she helped me to create the Black Financial Therapy Department in the Black Business School, where we work with great therapists to explore the psychological barriers to building Black wealth. And so if you'd like to learn more about what Dr. Alicia does, she sees clients on an individual and collective basis. Go to coachingwithdralicia.com. That's coachingwithdralicia.com. Hit that thumbs up button, thumbs up, share, subscribe. I think that what's really happening here, if you really look at the writing on the wall, it comes down to this idea that, and I think it's going to backfire on the Zionists. I really do. This idea that says, if you criticize what we're doing on any level, we're going to call you anti-Semitic. You know, it's almost like those anybody ever seen a Black person who calls everything racist? Like anytime they do something and somebody calls them on their BS, they racist, y'all racist, they racist. And then eventually people stop listening because you're overplaying your hand. You know, you're crying wolf around every corner. And so there are people that have legitimate views on what's going on in the Middle East. They're seeing, you know, for whatever reason, the media is reporting on this. Maybe it's because the media has been democratized just a little bit, so you can't control the flow of information. And they're kind of thinking to themselves logically, like, wait a minute. So they did kill 1,1700 people in that first attack, which was absolutely horrible. I mean, just horrific. You know, very sad to watch. But then you look at the other side and you're like, wait a minute, 21,000 people, or between 20 and 21,000 people, mostly women and children, dying on the other side. And who's paying for those missiles? Wait, we're paying for those missiles? We're paying for those weapons? I didn't sign up for that. And so there are students that are making that legitimate point, and they're doing it in a way that's not, they're not invoking violence. They're not going around beating people up and killing people. They're expressing their right to free speech. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. Now, one thing I want to bring up, babe, and I'd like to get your take on this, though, is that Harvard is stuck in a little bit of a dilemma, right? So when these presidents of these major universities, they called up the presidents of Harvard, MIT, and Penn, who all happen to be women, and they all go to Capitol Hill because they, you know, you upset Israel, they're going to have congressional hearings about you disagreeing with Israel. So they're all protesting in front of Congress, and what they find is that these individuals sort of become these champions of free speech, right? Like, we believe in free speech and expression, and they get into this back and forth about whether or not certain language that may call for a genocide or anything like that would be automatically condemned or automatically lead to disciplinary action. And it sounded to me, based on what I read, that they were kind of splitting the line and saying that saying something is very different from doing something. Right, that words are different from actions, which is a real slippery slope, right? Because you use the right words, you can hurt a lot of people with the right words, and so they were kind of saying, like, no, you should have just blanketly condemned it, made it 100% abundantly clear that you would punish these students if they say blah 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 XYZ. And which they actually did. I think when the backlash happened, they all turned around and they're like, no, we condemn it, right? If you read their statements later, they were all like, no, we condemn any call for any kind of genocide or whatever. But by then it was too late. But when I saw this, what I really saw was just this situation where Harvard, a university that does not have a good reputation when it comes to free speech, they had a ranking in some national publication where literally Harvard was ranked last in the country when it comes to free speech. Like they were ranked the lowest on the whole scale for free speech. So suddenly, though, you want to be a champion of free speech. I think that comes off as incredibly biased and arbitrary. So they kind of back themselves into that hole a little bit. What do you think?
Yeah, I remember when I was teaching at Florida State, we were, they give you orientation, and free speech is only allowed in certain parts of campus. So you are only allowed to say how you really feel in certain spaces on campus. Other places on campus that's not designated for free speech, you really need to keep your mouth shut about things. And I think Harvard also had that same policy. So I think that was the issue. It was like, okay, if you want to say what's on your mind, you can only say what's on your mind in these predestined, carved out spaces. And if you express yourself in a controversial topic outside of those spaces, then you need to be reprimanded. And I think that was the big thing about what's now happening on university campuses. It's supposed to be a place where, you remember back in the 70s when we were protesting the war? This is my parents. My parents were in college in the 60s and 70s. They were protesting the war and they were doing all those things all over campus. But no, not anymore. So a lot of that stuff has gone away. I don't know if a lot of people understand what that means, that free speech is not everywhere on campus, only certain spaces. And what's fascinating too is, you alluded to it when you were reading the article, is the money. The money. Because Harvard University's donors, they're big Jewish donors. Can I even say that?
I know. I mean, it's a level of persecution to the point where you're literally afraid to say the word Jewish. You're afraid to say the word Israel. You're afraid to say the word Zionist, because the intimidation is unbelievable. And I think they have to be very careful about doing this to people, because the world will turn against you. When you are an oppressor, the world will turn against oppressive energy, no matter who it's coming from. And so, yeah, you're right. It's kind of crazy that you're afraid to say the word, but go ahead, please.
Yeah, the algorithm will pick up what we talk about. But there's a guy, I was talking to my mom, and she told me there's a guy named Lim Blackvonik. That's his name. He's a Jewish donor. He's totally against this Dr. Gay as president, and he has donated $270 million. Some billionaire. We've never even heard of him. Where is he on the Forbes list? He is nowhere to be seen, right? $270 million. And he gives $25 million. $25 million he donates every year. So you better believe that man can make a phone call and say, she's out of here. I'm pretty certain he paid close attention to her congressional hearing, all the things that she said, and she did not get on the approval list, and so she's out of here. And I think also part of it, when I was talking to my mom, she said they were just afraid because they were getting death threats. They were threatening their families. Like, it was getting to a point where it was starting to get really personal. And I know as a mother and as a wife, I wouldn't want to jeopardize my family. So maybe she's like, forget it, I'll just step down.
Well, you know what? One of the big money, and we talk about money all the time on this channel, and I've explained to everyone consistently how money is power. And the big kahuna that's kind of behind all of this pressure is a guy named Bill Ackman. And he's a multi-billionaire. He's got a ton of money. He's been very aggressive on this issue, and he's been very blatant and clear about using his economic power to pressure Harvard, Penn, and MIT to basically do whatever the hell that he wants them to do. And it's interesting to me because I really would like to understand why Harvard, MIT, and Penn were sort of in the middle of this mess. But I didn't hear anything about University of Chicago. I didn't hear about Stanford. I didn't hear about, some of these other amazing institutions, Columbia, so I'm really wondering what's the difference? Like, what happened at Harvard that didn't happen at Columbia and UCLA and some of these other major institutions, Stanford? Why isn't Stanford kind of on the shit list too? So I'd be curious to understand that. And some people believe that some of it might have to do with the fact that the presidents were women. That there was kind of a bullying in public of these powerful women, to sort of make an example out of them. And I'm not going to doubt that. I kind of think that might be a part of this. And the thing about Ackman is he's a conservative that doesn't seem to really care. I actually know of this guy because I pay attention to the people that make money move in this society. And I followed Ackman's career for a long time. I don't dislike the guy. I do dislike this. But at the same time, I think that Black people and y'all know I'm here for y'all. That's why I talk about things. I'm talking to y'all first. Black people have to pay attention to how money moves the agenda. Money is the motive. Money is the manipulator. Money is the manager of every situation. It's not about right or wrong, right? We can talk about Professor Gay being removed from her position and how unfair that is. You're probably right. How racist it is. Yeah, you're probably right. How sexist it might be. You're probably right. But it really comes down to them dollar bills, right? So you mentioned the money, and Ackman's not the only billionaire donor who is using his economic power to pressure institutions to do what they want, to label anything that comes off as a disagreement with Israel's anti-Semitism. And it's kind of a sad experience, though, for scholars who somehow have been deluded into believing that we have some level of free speech or free expression. I don't think that we actually do on many of these campuses. What do you think?
Yeah, I definitely think it's, of course I talked about how political it is, but what's interesting about these female presidents, the Penn president resigned, and of course the Harvard president resigned, but the MIT president is still there, and her last name is Dr. Kornbliss. She is Jewish, and she did not resign. So I think like time will tell if she's really going to if she's gonna side with her females, if race is gonna be an issue for her, or is gender gonna be an issue for her? Which side is she gonna fall on? Because the MIT president is Jewish and she still has her job. So I think it would be really fascinating to see in the days ahead whether she's going to also leave, if she's going to leave along with her other two colleagues, or if she's going to kind of play the political game, which, I don't hate her for that. Like, I understand it's political, when I got tenure, I know there was some part of it was my ability, of course, but I know some of it was political. I probably had a lot of people on my side that I didn't even know about that advocated for me. And when I got promoted to professor, no one gave that to me. I know that on paper, I had everything that I needed above and beyond, twice as much as everybody else who went up for professor. But I'm certain there's some element of political nuance, that went into play when it came to me being promoted. I just don't doubt that at all.
Yeah. Well, let me say this. Bill Ackman, I said Ackerman. I meant to say Ackman. I apologize. He is now turning to MIT's president. Now that he's achieved, he's knocked down 2 out of the 3 pins. The MIT president, Sally Kornbluff, I think that's her name. He is going after her. And let's see here. It says here he's calling for all 3 of the presidents to resign. And I'm looking here and I'm reading this article. And he just posted on X to Sally, almost like you're a traitor to your community. So he is a Harvard alum. He's a billionaire founder of Pershing Square Capital Management. He's called he's called for these resignations. We mentioned that. And he's claiming that they failed to denounce calls for violence against the Jewish population. Now, one of the things that's really interesting to me as well is, to me, if you are concerned about, and yeah, we do read the comments, Jacob, but sometimes we can't always reference the comments. Well, we do read the comments. We're reading everything, I promise you. The interesting thing to me, though, is whenever you're accusing the other side of calling for violence against your side, it helps if you have examples of real violence. Like I remember even during our regular elections, everybody's telling me about all these crazy Trump supporters who are running around trying to kill Black people. They literally were trying to scare us into voting, saying, "Oh my God, these people are going to hurt you. These people are going to hurt you." I don't know. I mean, I don't know anybody who was killed by a Trump supporter. I just don't. And it was so bad that Jussie Smollett had to go out and make up a whole damn story that fit some sort of fantasy that of Trump supporters hating him because he's Black. And I thought that was incredibly disingenuous. And in the long term, it makes you look like a damn sucker. Like, it kind of says to me, like, play with the cards that you actually have and stop overplaying your hand. So I think on the other side, when you're sort of screaming that everything that disagrees with you is anti-Semitic, that everybody's calling for violence against you, but there's no violence against you. Like, nobody's saying it. Like, don't get me wrong. Now, what Hamas did, of course, what that group did, Not cool. You know, didn't understand it, didn't like it. It was a problem. That was thousands of miles away from here. None of that happened in Harvard Square. None of that happened, you know, in Chicago or wherever. And so to kind of sort of make it into this big national thing, when I hear the media and they're like, there's this rise in anti blah 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 blah. I'm like, where is it? I don't see this. You know, and so I personally think that it's gonna hurt them long term because people see what you're doing. Here's what you're doing. I'm a finance PhD. I know exactly what you're doing. What you're doing is you're engaged in the seemingly sometimes brilliant um, course of action where you have accumulated tremendous amounts of economic power, and you're using your economic power to create narratives and create false realities that other people have to follow. Let's say that this is where Hollywood comes from. Hollywood is run by certain groups of people who say we're going to spend billions of dollars making movies to push an agenda on society that they may or may not receive. Um, when I read the newspaper and I see that everything's blatantly biased and doesn't make sense, you can really tell if you go and you look at some of these major news outlets, whenever they report and they say that the headline will be, you know, everybody's anti blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to say those words too much because I'm not trying to get caught in the algorithm on this. People in the comments, you'll see hundreds of comments from people that'll say that's BS. You know, what about the thousands of people that are being killed on the other side? You're not talking about that. So it's almost like a come to Jesus moment. Because, and I'll say this, then I'd like to get your thoughts on this, babe. But I remember in 2006, I went to Europe and I did a stint with the Center for European Economic Research in Mannheim, Germany. I was in Germany the whole summer, and I was watching CNN every day. And that whole summer, there was a horrible, horrible war, just like this one that happened right in the Middle East. These wars happen every few years. They just spur up, and it's really ugly because here's what happened. The Palestinian side, I think they kidnapped a couple of Israeli soldiers, maybe like 2 or 3 of them. So in response, the Israelis came in and literally killed thousands of people, thousands of Palestinians. And I didn't know anything about this conflict at the time. I was just learning about it. And I'm sitting there watching this on the news, and it's just every day, hundreds more people getting killed. And I'm like, what are they doing to these poor people? Like, this is terrible. This is entirely disproportionate in the response. It doesn't make any sense to me. And so I'm seeing this war every day. It's like dominating the news, right? So pay attention now. I come back to the United States, and I'm assuming the whole world was seeing the same thing I saw when I was over in Europe. I talked to my American friends, and I'm like, yeah, did you see that terrible war that was going on in the Middle East? It was crazy. They had no idea that this even happened. The American media had not even, they had barely reported on it. Like it was like, oh yeah, there's this little thing happening in the Middle East. It's no big deal. And so this showed me that there's a big difference, or historically there's been a very big difference between the media that gets reported around the world and what we see as Americans. And I think long term, that's going to be to our detriment. I think one day we're going to pay a big price for things that are being done in our name around the world that we're funding with our tax dollars, and we don't know nothing about it.
Yeah, it makes sense because everybody looks to what's going on in the West. Like it's almost like we're the popular kids on campus, and everybody wants to know what we're doing, but we could care less what the unpopular people are doing. I mean, in a nutshell, that's kind of how we see things. So we only care about things that affect us directly. And historically, we just have never had, knock on wood, we've never had we've never been a war-torn country. We just don't have that in our history recently, So we can't empathize with that part of the news. And I know at some point, maybe news media tried to, talk about what was happening worldwide, and we just kind of got bored and turned the TV off. So I'm certain they have to be driven by what the consumer wants. And we don't want to hear about what's happening in some remote place somewhere. They don't even teach geography in school. So we don't even know where it is on the map. Half of these places, can anybody really point to the Gaza Strip on the map? Probably most people can't do that, So I think that's part of the issue too. But I just think that, I find such issue with being concerned about one group, violence against one group of people. Like it seems like if you were really altruistic, you shouldn't want anybody on any college campus to be violated. No matter who and what they are, you shouldn't want anybody in any community to be violated in any way. So it just really bothers me when a group of people is only interested in this group of people and the violence against them, not even taking into consideration all of the violence that's happening to all other groups, you know, not to name any of the groups. But it just seems to me, I just kind of look at those people like, really, you're that greedy and relentless? You only care about your own people? You don't care about, you know, I would hate to hear or to see anything about any racial group being treated horribly. You know what I mean? There's a part of me that's compassionate about sentient beings and all human beings in a sense, where I don't want to hear about any of that, you know, and I think injustice anywhere is injustice in my community. So I really don't like, I really don't like that sort of singling out one group as, you know, they don't deserve to have violence against them. Well, people should be able to go to college and have a good education and not have to be afraid of being attacked in that particular group.
Yeah, well. By the way, everybody, you're watching Pillow Talk with Dr. Boyce and Dr. Alicia Watkins. My name is Dr. Boyce Watkins. This is my wife, Dr. Alicia Watkins, and we do Pillow Talk to have intelligent conversations about things that are of interest to our community. And so, if you'd like to learn more about what Dr. Alicia does, she's a licensed therapist and a full professor of social work. She sees clients on an individual and collective basis. You can go to coachingwithdralicia.com. That's coachingwithdralicia.com. I'm the author of the book, Financial Lovemaking, The 10 Commandments of Black Economic Power, etc. So if you'd like to see more of my books, I've also created various tools for our people to become the most economically intelligent group of people on the earth. That's what I believe we are going to become. So if you'd like to get some of these tools that can work with your family, then feel free to go to drboycebooks.com and kind of look around. Use the code word book club to get 30% off anything in the bookstore. And we are building a Black institution over here. We're getting it done. All right. So let's go deeper into this whole thing. So we're talking about Claudine Gay, the president of Harvard, and her resignation, which I think you and I both agree that was a bunch of BS. Like we know, we see the writing on the wall. And what is interesting also about Professor Gay is that this kind of fits a theme at Harvard. Harvard does not treat Black scholars very well. And sure, you have the situation with Professor Gay and Bill Ackman, the billionaire donor, who's kind of leading this charge to pretty much attack certain university presidents that happen to be women over whether or not they agree with Israeli policies on, whatever they're deciding to do with the Palestinians. But here you also have at Harvard this sort of interesting pattern of Black faculty being treated absolutely horribly there. There's a brother, I've talked to you about this brother, Roland Frier. Roland Frier, who is an absolutely brilliant economist. A lot of y'all don't know his name, but I do. I respect him because Roland actually won this medal called the John Bates Clark Medal, which is basically the Nobel Prize for economists under 40. I mean, he's a bad boy, and I have so much respect for him. I remember being in grad school, and at one time in my life, that was my goal. I said, I want to win the John Bates Clark Medal, and then I said, no, I think I'd rather be a millionaire or something. So I went and did something else. But I respect him, right? So y'all don't know this, but everybody should know about Professor Frier. He ran this lab. So he's this superstar, right? On his way to win the Nobel Prize. He's got tenure at Harvard. He's kicking ass, taking names. God bless him. And then suddenly he gets hit with dun, 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 allegations that he created a hostile work environment, some things involving sexual harassment, nothing involving assault or anything from what I understand, but harassment and creating a hostile work environment or whatever, right? Very ambiguous, right? I tried to look for specific details. I couldn't find any details, but let me tell you what Harvard did to this brother. It was crazy. They suspended him for 2 years, basically put him in professor jail for 2 years and said, you're suspended without pay for 2 years. You can't come back to campus like you're some sort of predator. And then also what they did was they took away his lab. He has this multi-million-dollar lab. So the lab is gone. And now he's filed a lawsuit against the university, from what I understand. I don't know the status of this lawsuit. If anybody knows, feel free to email manager@boycewatkins.com if you have any updates, or if Professor Frier or his friends hear of any of this. The email is manager@boycewatkins.com. I'd be more than happy to give an update on that. And let me tell you about another case. There was Professor Ronald Sullivan and his wife, Stephanie Robinson. And now Ronald and Stephanie, that's personal to me and Alicia because Ronald's out of Gary. Shout out to Gary, Indiana. I have a beautiful wife who's brilliant, who also happens to be from Gary. And Professor Sullivan and his wife, from what I understand, if I'm not mistaken, were the first Black deans of a house at Harvard. They have these houses. I guess it's like a Harry Potter episode or something. Like they have these houses, right? So they were deans of these houses. So Ronald was selected because he's such a damn good lawyer. He was selected to be on the defense team of Harvey Weinstein. Well, the Me Too movement didn't like that. Y'all know the historic relationship between straight Black men and white women. So they just harassed the hell out of this man. They harassed him. They bullied him and his family. They pressured the university to remove him. And that's what they did. They removed him. And where I would have a bone to pick with Gay, Claudine Gay, it's interesting that she's in the fire right now because from what I understand, from what I read, again, I'm just speculating based on publicly available information, she kind of supported their removal. She didn't stand up for these other Black people that were being persecuted. Her and her white husband didn't stand up for them. So it's interesting to me. Here's what this says to me, babe, and I'm going to stop talking here, is it says a couple things. Number one, Harvard is racist as hell. So are a lot of universities, right? A lot of universities have this issue. Number two, it speaks to this idea of how sometimes we'll have Black folks that will try to fit in and they won't stand by other Black people. They'll watch other Black people get burned at the stake. And then after they finish burning their Black ass, they're going to come right after you. That was exactly what my experience was at Syracuse. I told you about that lady who wouldn't even talk to me because she thought I was too radical. And maybe I am. I am a radical person. If I see racism, I call it out. I've never been afraid to do that. I was doing that in the 90s, y'all. That's who I am. Unfairness, I'll say something, right? So there was a Black woman that I worked with. I kid you not. And I forgive her because she didn't know what she was doing. But she literally told me that she wanted to stay away from me because she didn't want that to mess up, her good schmoozing with the white folks, right? And I said, okay, well, keep your schmoozing ass over there. I don't need to talk to you. That's cool. I can ride solo. I got this. I'm not scared. Well, guess what? When they came to fry her Black ass, I mean, they treated her. They did her dirty. They did her so dirty. Guess who she came to for help? Guess who was her only backup when they tried to tear her down? And it was so bad when she got tenure. Nobody in her department congratulated her. Like, you know how it is. When you get tenure, everybody's like, way to go. Woo, that's a big deal. That's a landmark achievement. They didn't even congratulate her. I was one of the few people who said congratulations. And it took everything I had to forgive her. But I really wanted to say, see, this is what happens when we don't stick together. It's divide and conquer. They'll take me down first, then they'll come after you. Because they don't love none of us. So that's me being radical. I want you to lay out a more balanced, nuanced perspective on this. But this makes me mad as hell. It's horrible.
Don't talk to me right now, Boyce, because I'm in the middle of my 5-year review and I'm all triggered. So don't talk to me right now. I'm like super triggered, head deep into a lot of the document that I need to write to just talk about my progress at my university. So anyway, I just think that this is a survival mechanism. Sometimes Black people cannot openly support each other because they're afraid of the retaliation that they may receive. I mean, look at what's going on now with the lady from The Color Purple. What's her name? Oh God, you're better with the name. Taraji. Yeah. Taraji Henson. What's going on with Taraji right now, where she's outspoken about what her experience is like in these systems? Because by the way, Hollywood is a system. The university is a system. So systems that we're involved in is a microcosm of the macrocosm of the dominant society. And we live in a racist society. So how can not Hollywood just be a reflection of our dominant society? It's impossible for academia not to be a reflection of the dominant society. So that's what it is. Academia, Hollywood, it's just a micro system of a macro system that's based on racism and white supremacy. Let's just name it for what it is. So, and it's interesting because Monique is now talking, and she's like, dude, where was my support from these people when I was talking about the things that were happening to me that I felt was racist? Everybody tried to blackball me and didn't say anything at the time, didn't support me at the time. And so more and more people need to speak up against this system, right? Honestly, I think that ideally we just need to just have a non-participation. Just think, Boyce, imagine, if you will, the NFL. What would the NFL be if all Black people just decided not to participate? What would the NBA be if all Black people would just decide, I'm not going to participate? What would Hollywood be if all Black people just got together and said, non-participation? We're just going to just create our own stuff. Can you imagine how the entire system would collapse? We do not understand our power in these systems. You know, how devastating it would be for the whole system if we just said, you know what, it's racist and I don't want to participate in this racism anymore. Yes, I'm just going to have to take a hit financially. Hello, Mr. Finance Professor. You know, take a hit financially and just say, you know what? I'm not going to participate anymore. We're going to build our own. Just imagine if Dr. Gay tomorrow morning sends you an email and she says, Dr. Boyce Watkins, sign me up. I want to be your faculty member. I want to work with Dr. Alicia and I want to work with you. Harvard, I'm tired of Harvard. I'm bitter. If she were to do that, I would do the same. So I feel good. Like, come on. Like, what would the world be if we just stopped exploiting ourselves? We're letting ourselves be exploited by these systems that don't love us, that are going to mistreat us. That's all they know how to do. They don't know anything. Our entire history on the face of this ground, United States of America, is based on exploitation of our labor, and that has not stopped. That's how it's been, and that's how it's always going to be until we decide we are not going to participate anymore.
Well, you know, I think that's a
imagine that, Boyce. Imagine that.
Well, you know, I imagine it every day. I mean, you know, this morning when we were doing our financial consciousness training, I was explaining to everybody, you know, sort of what our dilemma is, why we continuously run into this wall of racism, and why it always surprises us. I said, you know, building an institution is like raising a child. And if you raise a child, then that is your child. You get to decide, you know, what the value systems are going to be. You have the greatest influence over the child. You get to tell the child what to do for a very long time. You have the greatest, if you use that influence, you have a tremendous amount of impact on what happens to that child. You have legal rights to that child, right? But what you don't have is the ability of the babysitter to come in and act as if they have the same power as the parent. And Black people, economically speaking, we're not trained to be economic parents. We're trained to be economic babysitters. We're trained to not create businesses from the ground up, not to give birth to institutions that are going to honor us and be in our image and follow our value systems. We're trained to babysit the institutions of other people. So the greatest accomplishment of Claudine Gay, God bless her for this. I have nothing against this woman, but her greatest achievement is that she was she was the head babysitter of Harvard University. But Harvard University, that is not an institution that's rooted in the tradition and the history of our community. That's not an institution that's ever going to be in a position to do anything for the masses of Black people. That's not an institution that will play any significant role in the elevation of the condition of Black people in this country. But it has played a role in the elevation of the condition of the Jewish community, right? Well, why? Well, because they control the resources. They have so much wealth locked into that institution. That's their baby. That's their $100 billion baby, and ain't no babysitter ever going to be able to come in and overrule the parent. So think about this: if you are a mother and the babysitter's like, you know, you're like, I don't want my baby to eat meat, and the babysitter's like, I fed your baby a hot dog today, it's going to be a problem. It's going to be like, it don't matter. She can explain all day about how the baby needs meat and it's not good for the baby to be a vegan. Whatever she believes, doesn't matter what you believe. This ain't your child. You have no rights up in here. And we become delusional. We really think that this illusion of power is the same as having real power, and it's just not the same. And a lot of it is because we get relegated to the role babysitter, because in our culture we don't have I don't think we push as hard to promote the idea of having enough discipline and delayed gratification to do the hard work and the deep digging required to actually give birth to and raise something of your own. Right? Like, so for example, you and I are sitting here, I'm digging in the trenches, running this thing called the Black Business School. I take this institution as seriously as I've taken any institution I've ever been part of. I've taught at Syracuse University, Indiana University, Ohio State University. God bless all those schools. I'm even a fan of Ohio State football. But at the end of the day,
I feel sorry for you this year, though.
I know, right? It was they got screwed. But at the end of the day, here's the thing. This is my baby up in here. Like, I'm ready to die for this baby. This baby, I got this baby in my will. Right? Literally, I was going through my trust and my estate plan, and there's a percentage of my assets that will go to making sure that the baby is good. And within this institution, I have a significant ability to shape the values of that institution. Right? I'm not going to go across the street to your university or to University of Chicago and expect to have the same amount of influence. Why should I? That's not my school. And if you look at the history of any institution, you look at Harvard, the history of Harvard. Harvard used to be raggedy too. Harvard used to be an upstart. There was a time where, if I'm not mistaken, remember you and I went to visit D1 at Harvard. D1, that's my buddy. I was on the phone with him yesterday for an hour and a half. I love this guy. And you and I went to Harvard to visit D1, and we were walking around the campus looking at all the little statues, and we saw, and all the stuff that showed the sort of tradition of Harvard. I'm looking it up on Wikipedia to try to just read the history. And from what I understand, there was so much legwork put into really building this institution and having faith in it when very few people did. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, John Harvard did not actually create Harvard University. John Harvard, he gave them like a building and some books. And they said, thank you so much for this building and books. We appreciate it so much. We're going to name the whole school after you. So this guy made one little tiny donation, and they named the whole school after him because they were so desperate for resources. So every institution starts off where you don't have this big, beautiful thing. You have this ugly little baby, and you got to love that baby, even if you think the baby might not survive, because that's the only way the baby will have a chance to live. So for Black people, we need to have more babies. We need to have more economic babies and stop training our children to be glorified babysitters. I don't care if you are sitting there as the Negro figurehead of some big institution that ain't doing nothing for your community except creating a couple of jobs. There's nothing in Harvard's history, and we can say this clear. There's evidence to prove this. There's nothing in Harvard's history to show that they have any significant commitment to the Black community. Most of the Black professors at Harvard get treated like shit. They do. They go through hell. Look at Ronald Sullivan and his wife, what they went through. Look at what Claudine Gay is going through. Look at what Roland Frier is going through. But why do we tolerate it? Well, we put up with it because we don't have much institutional self-esteem. We don't take pride in being connected to our institutions. We only take pride in being connected to theirs. So we say, well, I'm getting abused and I'm being mistreated, but at least I'm teaching at Harvard. And I get that, but I think maybe a reassessment or recalibration of your self-esteem would lead you to say, do I really want to be in a place where I am disrespected on a daily basis? Like what has to be wrong with me? What malfunction in my programming had to occur to make me think it's okay for me to be in a space where I'm going to get slapped around, crapped on, and abused at every other turn? I'm not doing so. So remember, you and I were talking, we were joking, and you said, Boyce, if Harvard offered us a job, would you want to take it? And what did I say? I said, hell no. I said, why in the world would I want to come work here when I'm doing the most important work I could be doing in the? I have impacted. Do you understand from this seat how many millions of Black people I have impacted? Some of y'all listening in here will tell me that you bought businesses because of things that we've done with you. You have invested for the first time. We've helped over 10 million Black people buy stock for the first time. We have stock market participation rates in the Black Business School that are at the level of millionaires. This is where I need to be. This is my baby. I'm not going to be why would I go be a babysitter when I'm a parent of some beautiful children? That's how I look at things. I'm going to stop talking because you know me, I get pumped up. But and no disrespect to Harvard or anybody there, but I'm gonna just tell you, I think we need to, as Black people, really ask ourselves, why do we tolerate that abuse when we're the prize? We're the ones that are building wealth for other people. We're the ones who are building everyone else's economic power. We're building the NFL. We're building the NBA. We're building these institutions. So why not do that for ourselves as readily as we do that for other people? Alicia?
Man, you need to stop, Boyce, because, you know, I'm in the thick of it right now. I'm preparing for spring semester and it is tough. I'm telling you, it is emotional. It is a really emotional process every time I have to just participate in things. So it's just a tough situation. But one thing I want to say is that, like, what's the life of Dr. Gale from here on? I think everybody should be empathetic to what Black faculty experience. Like for the Sullivan couple and for Dr. Gay, here you have made it. You're dean of a department of a college, dean of a college, you're president of a university. That is what all college professors aim for, because that's where the money and the influence and all of the wonderful accolades and money come from. And to just have that wiped away from you so quickly without your input, like I bet nobody told her, you know, no one sat down with her and said, tell us, Dr. Gay, how you really feel. And no one actually sat there and listened to her. And right now, she probably has to go and talk to her department head and figure out what courses she has to teach spring semester. She's been kind of back in the classroom. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it is like a demotion. And she has to kind of like swallow her pride. And she's now in the midst of prep. She's got to do a class prep. She's got to slap a fake smile on her face so that she can face students. And God knows what's going to happen in that classroom as backlash, right? She's got to sit in the classroom. Dr. Sullivan and Dr. Sullivan's wife, first of all, it was the allegations against him. And then not only did they demote him from being dean, but they also demoted her too, as if she was like a criminal just by being married to somebody. Like, I don't get how they figure that happens. Just because you share DNA, I guess they figure you're just one person, one unit. So both of them lost their prestigious position at a university. And they're back in the classroom. Not that teaching students is terrible, but, you know, they don't have as large of an impact on a macro level impact. They're in the classroom, they're prepping, they're getting their syllabus together, they're conjuring up these old lectures that they have to now teach. And you kind of have to, and people they don't care. There's no qualms about it. It's not like people are pretending to like you. They just letting you know that they don't like you. And if you want to stay here at this wonderful institution of Harvard and be able to be a Harvard professor, you're going to have to just grin and bear it. And I mean, that's the devastating part of these systems, because where are they to go? You know, if a university who can give them the money.
Well, I was going to say, Dr. Claude Anderson in Powernomics, he would say that they don't respect you. They don't respect, you know, and if you look at guys like Bill Ackman, who is the billionaire donor who's kind of behind everything that's happening with Claudine Gay and others, you know, he's a tough guy. He's a guy that understands economic power. He's a guy that doesn't give a shit what you think about him. He's a guy that comes in and is he a bully? Absolutely. He understands that money is power. And what I really want, you know, so he probably understands powernomics better than almost anybody that he's dealing with right now. And I encourage Black folks to sort of look at these public lynchings as a lesson. You know, it's a lesson, and it's a call to arms for us in terms of preparing for the future. Like I really want, you know, if you go to blackwealthmasterplan.com, I'm not just a complainer, I'm a planner. I'm a soldier at heart. My daddy was in Vietnam, and shout out to all the veterans out here that follow the platform, because I respect you. And so Black Wealth Master Plan is literally a plan where our children can literally be in a position of economic strength and power that allows them to be able to withstand this kind of bullying, this kind of abuse. I can tell you this, people who own their own institutions don't have to beg for nothing. They don't have to sit around and be mistreated and disrespected. And Alicia, I'm going to apologize to you also, because I did talk a lot. I get fired up and I can ramble. So I'm going to be quiet again, because I want to hear more of your perspective on this. But I would say to all of our people, what you got to understand is that when you have a place to go, you don't tolerate disrespect as much as you would when you have nowhere to go. When you have nowhere to go, then you'll be slapped around. Like I kind of think about Professor Gay, and I read her bio, and let me just tell you, this lady is heavily accomplished in her field. She's really good. I can't remember if she studied economics like I did. I think she might have. I got to double check that. But she's good. I mean, to become president of Harvard, you got to be damn good at what you do. And here this lady has been shamed. She's been made to look like a quack. She's been made to look like a fake scholar. And I'm gonna tell you, that's BS. That ain't right. Nobody works hard as she has. Straight A's all the way through school, went to top universities and all that, to be made to look like a common dumb Negro, an incompetent Negro. Like, that's kind of what they reduced her to. And I think that that's patently unfair. But then again, though, at the same time, when you're trying to play a competitive battle on somebody else's turf, that's what they'll do to you, and I don't understand why someone like her would be afraid to align herself with Black institutions where we would honor her, where she could be forgiven for any mistakes she might have made. And people can sort of outweigh, look at the good and outweigh that with the bad. It's almost like how you and I were on the phone talking. We talked to Bill Cosby that night. And we talked to him, and our moms were excited, to hear from him, even with all the allegations, even with everything, right? And it's not to say that everybody on the phone believed that Cosby was innocent. It was to say that everybody sort of had a balanced and a nuanced perspective of Cosby, to say, okay, maybe this guy did make some mistakes. Maybe there are some things that we're concerned about, but we're not going to forget about all the great things he accomplished. We're not going to forget about Fat Albert and what he did for children. We're not going to forget about the Cosby Show and how he changed the culture. We're not going to forget about the $20 million he gave to Spelman. We're not going to forget about the way he shifted the culture for HBCUs by creating a different world when he didn't have to. We're going to make sure that as we remember all the bad things you did, we're going to remember the good things you did too. And that's the fairness. That's what fairness looks like, everybody. And fairness is something that you only tend to get around people who care about you and understand you. She's not being treated fairly. What do you think, Alicia?
I mean, I think she did everything right. I mean, she played the game as it was laid out to her. She probably did it with long nights, working really hard, writing those papers and being competent in her job. I'm almost certain she did the best that she could. She did everything right, and she still was reduced down to a stereotype. An incompetent Black woman who is scary and doesn't deserve to be in the position that she's in. She's now gone down in history. She's in history books now. The shortest tenure of a university president in the whole history of the university. They made sure she was that's historical.
Damn.
But her face on it, I don't know how she can conjure up the strength to return spring semester.
That's a big question, right? It's kind of like, why go back? Like,
No,
I don't know.
not.
What do you think? Like, why go? Like, there's so many places you could probably go, I assume, right? Somebody wants you other than Harvard. Like, why do you have to be there? Like, I think that's another question I think we have to ask ourselves as Black people. Like, it's like, you ain't got nowhere to go. You have nowhere that you can be where people are going to really love you and appreciate you. You have to be in spaces where you're going to be harassed. And Claudine, I mean, she got every ticket. She even got the white husband. Usually the white husband, that'll give you some brownie points, right? She's, her, what's the late Ketanji Brown Jackson, who also went to Harvard. She has the white husband. What's her name? Kamala Harris has the white husband.
Yeah, she did everything right.
she did everything right. They still hung that lady up. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, oh, Look at her. We knew. Remember, we did a pillow talk back a long time ago, and we kind of knew. We kind of felt sorry for her. We kind of were like predicting. I don't think we predicted that her tenure would be so short, but we predicted, wow, she played a good game. Let's see how that works for her. And now we can see how that works for her. She did everything right. I bet I haven't seen her congressional testimony, but I'm almost certain she was very well prepared. I'm certain she met with all her lawyer friends and had all the jargon correct, but she didn't have everything else correct. She should have had a stronger stance against anti-Semitic messages, and that was someone didn't pull her coattail and tell her this is what you need to say. And so maybe she decided she wasn't going to play the game, and this is what happens when you don't play the game.
Well, I'll tell you what, I don't have anything against her. I certainly wouldn't wish ill will on anybody. I think there's consequences to everything, and I think the financial lesson to understand here is that this was all driven by money. This is all about the money. The reason Bill Ackman and his friends could come in there and push around, the folks at Harvard and MIT and Penn, is because they position themselves financially to have that kind of power and influence. If you don't think money and power will kind of dominate all these idealistic values that we have about free speech and academic freedom and all this other nonsense. No. If you don't have money, it's very, very hard to have free speech in this country if you don't have the financial resources to back it up. So I want everybody to just take note on this and sort of watch how the game is played. Power doesn't care about right and wrong. It is as that community is kind of showing you. They have a tremendous amount of economic power, and I'm not even mad at them for using their power in a way that benefits their agenda. I just want you to make sure that you do the same thing. And here's the thing, too. You don't have to be a billionaire to do that. If you're just a person or a family that is financially secure and you can pay your own bills, then you have a lot more of a defense system in place that allows you to have the liberties that you feel you deserve. So if I, like, for example, you might have heard me say things that are controversial on the platform or whatever. My level of financial security is what allows me to do that. When I had the controversy over the fact that I didn't like the fact that Lizzo's record label was using this black woman to promote obesity to the black community, when obesity is the number one killer of black people. You're promoting the death of black people. Like, to me, that's what I'm seeing. And I said that openly. I didn't apologize. I didn't stutter. I didn't take my words back. The media bashed me. Everybody talked crazy about me. I had the speaking engagement canceled with the A.G. Gaston Society in Birmingham. I didn't care. You know why? Well, because I'm good financially. I have all I need. Right now, if I was a guy who was desperate, who was begging for a job, who was living paycheck to paycheck, then you probably either would never have heard me say that, or you would have heard me apologize very, very quickly to try to clean things up. And so I personally think that unapologetic black people have far more power than any politician, than any of these fake leaders that are running these big white institutions. I think unapologetic black people who can pay their own bills and do what they need to do, say what they need to say, be who they need to be, you're going to have more impact than almost anybody who's sort of presented as this paper tiger at the top as a figurehead of some institution that they don't even really run. Right? If you're given this artificial power, they could take it away from you just like that. You're not a real power base. You're not a power source. You have proximity to power. You are a power conduit. Somebody else that really is the power base is pushing power through you. And when you get out of line, then they're going to remove you. And this is what you're seeing with Claudine Gay. So anyway, I'll let you get the last word, babe, before we go out.
I mean, clearly her purpose in being president was to forward their own agenda. And as soon as you're off script, this is what happens. It's a public display of what happens when you don't follow through with their agenda, because I'm certain there were a lot of people in that group who supported her thinking, okay, we're going to throw our support behind this lady. And then when things happen, we want her to ante up. She needed to ante up to the groups who put her in power. I'm certain those groups put her in power. Those were her constituents. I mean, we learned that with Barack Obama's presidency. Like, he was president of the people who put him in power. He furthered their agenda. He did a marvelous job of that. And another thing I wanted to say is that we no longer need to say that university campuses are liberal. We need to stop saying that, because there's a lot of conservative sort of ideology that's being pushed. And I don't like that. I kind of feel like we should get into what's true. We should get into the facts. You can't make up your facts. You can twist your facts. You can twist the facts into whatever you think you want it to be. But I think that universities should be a place where knowledge is generated. And that's what helps to keep our country strong, honestly. And I think that if we start tearing away from and making research studies and research political, then we start tearing away from knowledge. So,
well, I do think campuses are liberal, but then again, though, we could debate that another time. So
yeah, I mean, well, we can't say that, because this particular gentleman that you're pointing to, he's a very conservative person who's like, no, you either believe what I believe or you're out of here. And I don't think that that's adhering to knowledge, right? You can't make your own facts. You could definitely, it's political.
Well, I think in this particular case,
analyze it, you can't make up your own facts. And I think that's an issue.
Well, I definitely agree in this particular case. The conservatism wins because conservatives tend to have the money. But I think overall, well, remember Ronald Sullivan got removed because when Ronald Sullivan got removed, it was due to a liberal agenda. It wasn't conservative. It was the Me Too movement that removed Ronald Sullivan.
Oh my God!
Roland Frier, the black scholar at Harvard, when he got removed, that was also part of the whole Me Too conversation. Or even if you look at what happened with the Michigan State head coach who had the $90 million contract, y'all should look him up. Mel Tucker. Mel Tucker had a $90 million contract, and he was accused by a woman of doing something over the phone, literally no assault, no nothing. Just he said something inappropriate over the phone, and they fired him from his job and took away his $90 million contract. And I think that's going to lead to a massive lawsuit because there's a lot of evidence to say that she may not have been truthful in her allegation. But even then, it's like the question becomes, is it really worth $90 million? And so, I kind of think, it can be sometimes conservative, but at the same time, the big lesson in this particular case is that money is a big driver in a lot of decision making in most institutions. So build your wealth as a source of protection and also as a source of true empowerment, because it's hard to have power in America without money. And Ackman is an example of that. So we're gonna head on out, guys. Dr. Alicia's website is coachingwithdralicia.com. You can go check out what she does. She sees clients on an individual basis, a collective basis, stuff like that. And also, for me, my website's boycewatkins.com. And I also send out profit alerts with stocks that I like, stuff like that, to help you guys build wealth. You can get a copy of our $5 a day investing plan in the Black Business School, where we've helped millions of people buy their first share of stock. That's what I do. That's my expertise. So if you'd like to get all that sent to you, just text the word stock to 89748. Text the word stock to 89748, and we will send you these things for free and get you started on the pathway to investing. So for those of you that also are doing our financial consciousness training every day, I'll see you in the morning at 10 a.m. We're doing 30 straight days. If you'd like to join us, just go to drboyceelevate.com and you can join us in the morning. So thank you, baby. I appreciate your time. Thanks for hanging out with me. All right. Bye-bye.